Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Life comes with big money questions. Is it better to max out your 401k or put more in a brokerage account? Does buying a home make financial sense in today's market? Should you use extra cash to pay off debt or invest? NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast has the answers. Their finance journalists break down investing and budgeting strategies to help you build wealth and navigate major financial decisions. Make smarter money moves. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast wherever you listen.
Hey, cats and kittens, it's T-Bear here, Richard T-Bear, and I'm here on the Dr. Sky Experience on Talk Radio 77, WABC, the most wonderful radio station ever invented in the world, in the universe. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Dr. Sky Experience, heard exclusively here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, the crown jewel of radio, as we like to call it, the iconic 77 Talk Radio WABC, keeping proudly out of New York City, the nation, the world, and the cosmos. We do appreciate your interest, folks. If you'd like to get in touch with me for emails and commentary, it's simply drskyshow@gmail.com. Well, we take our Theater of the Mind radio audience out into the galactic plane as we introduce to you in just a moment a very interesting, legendary performer, a singer, songwriter, keyboardist, man who does so much with mix, blues, rock, and Americana. I'm sure you're going to love this particular edition of the Dr. Sky Experience. And who better to talk about it is himself. That's Richard T-Bear, but we do a little background for the audience. T-Bear is a distinctive singer and a talented keyboard player who's made his mark as a solo performer and collaborator with many iconic artists. How about Crosby, Stills, and Nash, the Blues Brothers, Billy Squier, Cher, as well as Gene Simmons and Paul Chris. Yes, just to name a few. He's currently on a worldwide tour with the blues guitar legend Walter Trout. Well, folks, a hearty welcome to our special guest, T-Bear. How you doing there, my friend? Thanks for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the Dr. Sky Experience. T-Bear here. Hello, cats and kittens. How's everybody doing?
That's awesome, my friend. You know, your background, it would probably take me a whole show to go through all the interesting things that you've been involved with and also involved with now. But today we focus on something interesting. New album that you produced called The Way of the World, 13 original songs. And it's like you described it after the whole period of COVID. On a positive side, you described this experience, and I quote, like what? A new pair of glasses, end quote. So tell us about this new album, which came out in March from Quarto Valley Records. We've had other performers from Quarto Valley Records, but this is kind of exciting. Talk to us a little bit more about what people can expect when they get that music that you yourself produced with other great musicians.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really happy to talk about the album. It's really an oasis for your ears and your mind. It's got a lot of great stories in the songs, and as a singer-songwriter, what I try to achieve is try to tell a story in 4 or 5 minutes tops. And I think I've accomplished that with this album, The Way of the World, on Quarto Valley Records. And after COVID hit, I had an album out, the first album with Quarto Valley, called Fresh Bear Tracks, because I hadn't put anything out in many years. I took a hiatus,
right.
And that was really, really well received. The single went to #1 in Europe, but we couldn't tour, couldn't do anything. You know, it was the COVID, it was the lockdown. So I started writing short stories, watching a lot of, Netflix, like everybody else in the world. And, I started writing a new album, and I was listening to a lot of Bob Dylan at the time. And I was thinking to myself, what would Bob say about the world and what's going on in it? So I started to write, kind of the lyrics, because that's what I do first, The Way of the World. and I followed it up with 12 other songs that I came up with, as well as a bonus track that I do called Red Harvest that's on that record with Paul Rogers. So he sings it with me, the singer from Bad Company and Free, the great legendary Paul Rogers. So we do a duet together on the bonus track. And the album is really taken off. It's also has a #1 record in Europe with the single "A Change Would Do Me Good," which is really a kind of an homage to Bo Diddley and that kind of beat. People seem to really, really identify with the songs in this album.
Amazing. No, it sounds great. It sounds so amazing, and it's great to have you. But let's talk a little bit about you, the man himself, as we talk with our special guest today, Richard T-Bear, T-Bear as he's called. And this is interesting. Just like yourself and myself, we're both born in New York City, but you were raised in the Caribbean, if this is correct. And you had what? First fascination with music, maybe not the only one in your life as far as the beginning, but the British invasion was an inspiration for you. Tell us about that time in New York and the Caribbean. What an interesting story.
I'm born in New York City, raised in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico and Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and got involved in, as a very young child, Latin music as well as Creole kind of music. And my parents would take me out to nightclubs with them because they knew I loved music so much. And I would really enjoy meeting the bands and whoever was playing. And I thought it was so special. And, when we got back to New York, they had a piano in the house. And I started playing that. And I'd go down to record stores on my bike and I'd buy records. And, at the time, I'm listening to radio in New York, WABC, Cousin Brucey, and all those kind of cats, and listening to all those songs. And the British invasion really caught my ears, and I loved what the British guys were coming up with. And then I got a job at Manny's Music on West 48th Street in New York City. And I worked there for a little while, and I'd go down to the Fillmore East after my gig, and hear bands and fell in love with music. Go to open mic nights all around the city, and people started to take notice of me as a musician and a player, and I loved becoming a singer-songwriter, watching all these open mic nights. And, that's how I kind of jumped into it.
This is interesting, T-Bear. I got to share something, and I want to hear your, opinion on this, both fellow New Yorkers here. There's a story that I got to hear about since you talked about Manny's Music. Now, this is fascinating. I heard that the owner, tell me if I'm right on this, Henry Goldridge, had this policy that if you came in and you grabbed the guitar, his concept was, and I hope I have this right, you try it, you buy it. And he used something called a yellow guitar. So in other words, he wouldn't pull fresh stock off the shelf. And even people like George Harrison supposedly wanted to buy the yellow guitar, but he refused, the owner. So that legacy, that's amazing. Tell us, is that story even true that I'm telling people? Or
a lot of that story is true. I mean, I was so enamored with Manny's Music that my parents for my 13th birthday, bought me a Farfisa Combo Compact. And that's my first sojourn into Manny's Music. And Henry and Stuart, and I became kind of friendly with them. And I'd spend my weekends down there just hanging out in the shop. And they finally went, when you're a little older, you ought to work here. You spend enough time here, you should get paid for it. And Henry was like that. And I saw some amazing musicians come through there. And in fact, I'll regale you with one little story.
Please.
A bunch of guys came in one day while I was working there, and they saw me playing the keyboards and showing somebody a keyboard. And they said, "Well, why don't you come down to the Fillmore East tonight? I'll give you a backstage pass, and we're all having a jam there." And I didn't know who these guys were. You might have a lot of fun down there, watching us jam, and there'll be a lot of other bands coming down, and let's let's put something together tonight. So I went down there, my first, backstage pass. I went and sat in the seats, and then went backstage, and I stood on the side of the stage, and everybody was playing for about an hour. And then all of a sudden, the guy that was playing guitar looked at me, and he beckoned for me to come out. And I sat on a keyboard, a Wurlitzer keyboard, and I started jamming with everybody. And the band that I was jamming with, I realized at that point, was the Grateful Dead, Traffic, and Hot Tuna. And I looked around, and I thought to myself, I want to do this the rest of my life. So that was that.
Wow.
It was on at that point.
What an introduction to music. But here we go, folks. Our very special guest today, as you're hearing, is a legendary music performer. He himself a singer, songwriter, keyboardist, and so much more. Who we're talking with, Richard T. Baer, otherwise simply known as T. Baer. And you're listening to Talk Radio 77 WABC with me, Dr. Sky, with the Dr. Sky Experience. We call ourselves the crown jewel of radio. We do believe that the iconic 77 Talk Radio WABC, beaming out of New York City, the nation, the world, and I'm sure the cosmos, all this is being done professionally produced. Our producer, Richard Dugan, Dr. D. T. Baer, this is interesting. Your first album, I think, is back in 1978 with RCA Records, Red, Hot and Blue. That's an experience.
Yes.
So how do you go from being this musician that's following other musicians? What does it take to get the first album done? I mean, that's not an easy task by any means. Explain to people who may not know that you just don't walk into a studio and they say, here's your album. It takes a lot more. Tell us.
Well, I was listening to, lots of stuff like we talked about. And then I started getting calls to play on people's records. Richie Havens called me to play on his album. And then I met Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley and the whole KISS crew, and they had me starting to play on their records. And then Cher wanted me to play on her records and write her songs. And I going back and forth to England, working with those people, and then out to California, and Stephen Stills introduced me to Crosby, Stills and Nash and those people, and I started playing on their records. Southern Cross was a big hit, for example. And, I got a reputation and the Blues Brothers and this and that and Cher, and it just built and built and built, and there was a buzz about me. And I put a band together in New York City, and I was playing at a club called Tracks on 72nd and Columbus, and a bunch of record companies came in, and they all looked at each other, and they, they kind of the A&R people and whatnot, and they're like, well, who's going to sign them? And RCA came right over and said, we want you. And I went, great. And so I gave them a bunch of demos I had done. They liked the songs. They said, who do you want to produce it? I said, well, I listened to a lot of the Guess Who and Bob Seger. And there's a guy called Jack Richardson. So I went up to Canada in Toronto and did the album there. And the single Sunshine Hotel, they made into a maxi 12-inch extended play dance record, and it went top. It was in it went to number 4 in the world charts, dance charts, and it was top 5 and number 1 over in Europe everywhere. So it was a big hit.
No, that's amazing. And that's amazing.
Yeah,
I was going to have people. I just listened
how I
to
got
it,
a record
so the listeners know. I was listening to Sunshine Hotel, and it brought back so many great memories being back in New York when there was a radio station. Maybe you even knew this, WKTU, and we wound up having a special opportunity there with listening to a guy named Paco who talked all about those kind of disco songs. Is that somebody you remember?
Yeah, I do remember a lot of that. This wasn't a disco record. They made it into a disco record. They remixed it.
Okay,
and,
there you go. Now that's
and edited into that.
That sounds so cool.
Because it was more of a rock and roll record, when I finished with it, and Jack Richardson finished it, and then Warren Schatz, who was head of A&R down there, he went in the studio and kind of picked it apart and made it into a disco dance record, which I'm grateful for because it's still, to this day, being played in discos all around the world.
Well, T-Bear, not to tell you how to do things, but if I were you, I'd surely have a book going out, just the same as we're talking today about your brand new album here, The Way of the World, with 12 original songs, like you described after COVID. It's like an experience, like a new pair of glasses. But I got to ask you this. Let's go back into that time machine as we can talk today. You were the road
Sure.
manager for Carly Simon, too. Talk about that. I mean, that's incredible. Well, what a wonderful performer she obviously is throughout all of music history.
Well, that was again one of the launching steps for me. I wanted to be in the music business. I wanted to do anything I could do to, progress a career. So when an opportunity with some musicians that I knew that played with Carly came along, they said, "Hey, we're going out on the road. We're going to play some gigs. We kind of need a road manager. You want to come out as a road manager?" And I had my eye on the keyboards, but they had already had a keyboard player. But I thought to myself, well, this can't hurt. So I went out and did that for a little while. And then I thought to myself, okay, I've done that, but I really want to be on the stage. I want to play. I want to, be part of the music process and the scene. And, one thing led to another, and I got the opportunities to play in lots of bands. And, like I said, I got that record deal and made 4 albums for RCA, then another 3 or 4 albums for Teldec over in Europe. And I shuttle back and forth between Europe and the United States.
That's incredible. And you're the songwriter. I'm reading this. Cher's a song that you wrote for her, right? Love and Pain. I mean, this is incredible. Describe her to the audience. I mean, she seems to me, when you look at her today,
I met Cher.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I met Cher when she was dating Gene Simmons. I was doing his album. And she had flown over with Gene, and we all kind of lived at the Manor, which was a manor house that Virgin Records owned, for a couple of weeks, and got to know her very, very well. And she said, "Hey, there's a song on your album that I've been listening to that I really like. I'd like to cover it." And I said, "I'd be honored." And so she did Love and Pain, and to this day, critics say that it's the best ballad she's ever sung in her life. And she does it on tour. She does it live. She did it on her TV specials and things like that. And then I wrote her a few more songs and helped her put a rock and roll band together. And she's a wonderful, wonderful person. A really, really generous, authentic, and very, very smart person.
Well, T-Bear, we're going to do something right now to honor you. Obviously, you're our special guest here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Obviously, you know better. From the 12 original songs, we're going to actually play something from The Way of the World. So the audience will now hear this. We continue to talk with you about this wonderful experience that you've had, a long legacy here in the music industry with your own music. Obviously, something that people need to share and understand.
Never stop swimming. Riders need a beginning. Cheaters never stop winning. That's the way of the world. Losers need a do-over when they're living in clover. They want it over and over. That's the way of the world. I fold up my past, put it away in the drawer. Got my back up against the wall once more. Evangelists never stop sinning, and politicians never stop grinning. Bill collectors, they never stop sending, and that's the way of the world. Ex-wives never stop spending, hipsters never stop trending, bankers never stop lending. That's the way of the world.
So that's something that we're playing, but I want to also find out, how do people get in touch with you? I just wanted to get you to tell us the website that people can go to or other ways to keep in touch. And, of course, how to get a copy downloadable or however they get modern music today, The Way of the World. How do we stay in touch with you?
Well, to stay in touch with me, you can download on all the streaming platforms The Way of the World by T-Bear, and you can go to QuartoValleyRecords.com and order anything you want T-Bear wise on their website and their shop. And also you can get a hold of me by tbear.rocks.com. That's my website, as well as I have a Facebook and an Instagram, Richard T. Bear on Instagram, and also Richard T. Bear on Facebook. And I also do a live podcast, and you can be a guest on that and enjoy it every Tuesday. I have some other things I've done called the Bear Facts. Mm-hmm. That's on YouTube, and that's the way the folks can get a hold of me. And I'm also on the road playing with the legendary blues master Walter Trout, and I will be in New York City playing with him at the Uranium on August 30th and 31st, as well as the Eastern Seaboard.
We wish you best of all things, spiritually and health-wise and otherwise. Great success in this world tour with legendary blues guitarist Walter Trout. I want to thank you. This is amazing because we both share our New York City background, and of course, as you mentioned before, the legacy of this great radio station, Talk Radio 77 WABC. I wonder how old Cousin Brucey is. We've had him once as a guest in other formats around the country, but what an amazing man himself. I mean, look what he did to promote music. And isn't that a correct statement? I think he was the one who really introduced America, other than Ed Sullivan, to the Beatles. Would I be right in that, Stephen?
You would be right. Absolutely. An amazing DJ, an amazing person, really, really generous and nice. And, I kind of put him up there on radio the way that Dick Clark was on TV. The same. I look at them both the same way.
Well, T-Bear, thank you for your time as we now ask you to hold on and stay on the line with us as we go to the hard break at the bottom of the hour. But ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to a legend himself. So many stories about the great stories of music that he's been involved in. Has obviously a brand new album from Quarto Valley Records. Go ahead and download this amazing piece of music. 12 original songs. The title, of course, The Way of the World. He himself, a great blues, rock, Americana musician. So much more, songwriter and singer, and of course, keyboardist. T-Bear, the best to you as we say thank you, and hopefully we'll talk again real soon. And that concludes this exciting edition, as you folks tell us, of the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Our normal format is that of the science subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, American exceptionalism, and those in the know in the music world and in the celebrity world. Thank you, T-Bear, for joining us here on the Dr. Sky Experience.